Well, I went in high. Yes, absolutely. The only catch, really, if I'm entirely honest, was it wasn't very well paid because it was horrible. Stills photography by its very nature on a set is challenging.
Alex, you've been doing these since 1990. Unit stills.
Oh, have I? Thank you.
I think so. 1991.
1991, yes.
That's when
30, I was 28, so yes, 36 years nearly, yeah.
And but before you discovered unit still, how did your passion and your love for taking pictures came?
My first introduction to photography was at a photographic club when I was age 12 at school. That's when I began to get interested in photography. Again, it was relatively, it was in the dark room, black and white photography, seeing pictures appear in the developing tank, etc., which is obviously a familiar story with lots of photographers, but it is a magic moment. And I think the wonderful creation of images always stays with you, to be perfectly honest. So that was my first introduction, age 12. Really, then I got to the age of about 18 before I started getting more serious about photography, thanks to a partner that I had at the time who worked as a graphic designer, or was rather training as a graphic designer. And she said to me that she felt that I had a good visual interpretation of things, a good visual understanding, better than hers in some ways when it came to photography. So that's when I decided that I was going to enroll on a course, which I did at North East Surrey College of Technology in Ewell, and did a City and Guilds in photography.
What was your first apprenticeship or job right after that? What year are we talking about?
That would have been about 1982.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't even born there.
No. You probably, I don't even know if your parents were together by then, were they?
And what was that first job about? What did you have to do?
Fortunately, the City and Guilds that I did at York Tech, they had a relationship with the local newspaper. So when the newspaper wanted to hire somebody to help in the darkroom, they actually approached the college to start with. So it was a lucky, really. It was a good break, which obviously always helps with any career or anything in life. And they approached the college, and I was about the only student actually wasn't working. City and Guilds was about really doing an apprenticeship. A lot of the people I was at college with, they had jobs already, and the places they worked for had sent them onto the course. One or two of us had put ourselves on independently. So to start with, when I was at college, I was doing odd jobs, working in an off license, doing building jobs, delivering sandwiches, things like that. And then I was going to college 2 days a week. But I'd only been at the college about 3 or 4 months when the South London Guardian group of newspapers approached the college and was after an apprentice. So I was the only one that didn't have a job. So I went for the interview. It was only me. So I got the job, which was fortunate. And I started off working in the darkroom, processing black and white films, because it was black and white then, believe it or not. Predominantly the newspapers printed in black and white only. It was that long ago. So we used to, we were a department of about 5 of us altogether. There were 4 photographers and me mainly working in the darkroom, processing their black and white rolls of film, printing them, and then the newspaper would scan the prints and then they would go into the newspaper for publication. It was a weekly newspaper.
How long were you there for?
In all, I was there for about 2.5 years. I started in the darkroom for about 6 months, and then it was a great period of expansion in newspapers because it was going digital, and also they were taking on colour photography. So they were expanding very, very quickly. So, for example, the newspaper in one of the areas ran to about 100 pages altogether, and they were a mixture of different types of jobs. Some of it was press jobs, so it was actually proper kind of like. There was the Putney gas explosion happened while I was there. There was a break about the royal family. So some of the jobs were pressy and some of the jobs were kind of straightforward editorial. It would be, for example, a local journalist a local writer, for example, they might be doing a piece on or a story on, etc. So, and there were sports events as well. So Saturdays, I used to get day release on a Wednesday to go to college, but then I had to work every Saturday and I'd do the sports events, which would be local football and things like that. The advantage of working in a local newspaper is that you do such a range of different jobs. A lot of successful photographers that have gone into, for example, stills, did often have a press or PR background, because it's the variety and diversity of the types of work you take on, plus also, the assignments you get rather, but it's also you're dealing with personalities. Often you're having to deal with celebrities and so on at openings and bits and pieces. So there's a certain kind of experience and knowledge that you gain from that as well. So newspaper work was great. So in all, I did about 2 years working for the newspaper, and I worked my way up from the darkroom, junior photographer, to fully fledged photographer. But what I found eventually was that I didn't really, sometimes I found that the work didn't really fulfill my creative desires, and it felt a bit limited. I was still only in my early 20s, so I really wanted to take my photography further. So I specifically looked for a job that would be more demanding, that would use large format, would use lighting, etc., etc. And I saw a job advertised in the British Journal of Photography at a Hearst Research Centre, which was a GEC, which was a research centre for graduates in Wembley in North London. And I applied for the job and I got the job. I don't think I was the only applicant that time, but I got on very well with the lady who ran the department. And it was a department, I think there were 6 of us there altogether. It was a busy department, and they were photography and audio visual. And she had a very forward way of approaching employment and giving people the opportunity. So probably in a more commercial environment, the system she worked wouldn't perhaps be the most efficient. But what she did was we rotated. So 1 week we would do black and white photography, 1 week we'd do colour photography, 1 week we would do working in the dark room, the black and white dark room. Another week we would work in the colour dark room. And they also had an AV department. So I also trained to do basic video camera work as well. And they sent me to Leeds University on a couple of short courses to do video. So each week we rotated. So we would get the experience and of working in all the different departments. So it was like really going to college. It was like going to university. Everybody else there was actually degree qualified. I was the only one that didn't have a degree. And they did some very scientific and some very exacting work, working on 5.4, 2.25 studio lighting. We used to photograph lasers. We did some very complicated types of photography there. And what I found was that the other people in the department were very generous with their knowledge. So they were great about sharing how to do so many random different types of photography, etc., like photographing lasers using smoke and using neg bags to make the laser beams stand out. It was complex, absolutely. So I did a couple of years working at GEC, getting to my mid-20s, to sort of 26, 27. So what I realised now was that I did actually have a lot of knowledge with photography. I'd been to college, I'd worked a lot on 35mm, I'd worked in press and PR, I'd worked with actors, celebrities and so on. I'd worked in lighting situations where I'd had to work very quickly on the run in the newspaper. Then I'd gone on to work at GEC, and I had a lot about large format and studio lighting, and I'd understood about video and how video had begun to work, etc. I'd taken on colour, as I say, and E6 and C41. So I did have a very good grounding and a good knowledge in photography in all different directions. The only catch, really, if I'm entirely honest, was it wasn't very well paid. I mean, that's the bottom line, which I think a lot of people do come across, is that there are some really exciting and some really good jobs out there working in photography for companies on the payroll, being part of the organisation, but the salaries are really, to be honest, quite modest. It's quite difficult. Yeah. So I really rather felt that I wanted to try and have a go at being freelance. And I think, which is something that everybody probably wants to have a bash at from time to time. So as a photographer, try and get their careers off the go. And I did then go out trying to do portraits and do property photography and various. But then I had a friend of mine who had worked in the film industry, and they asked me to go and work on a film called Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And I thought, well, I didn't know anything about stills photography. It was something that was new to me. I didn't really know about all the ins and outs of it. And I went, this friend of mine asked me to go and assist a photographer called David James, who was working on a film called Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves at Shepperton Studios in West London. So we went at the crack of dawn, 5 o'clock in the morning, thought ridiculous time to be going to work, and turned up at the studios. And the first thing I noticed was a lot of young people, similar age to me, driving decent cars, and obviously on the surface of it, earning a good living. Yeah. And I thought, well, this looks like a distinct possibility for me, a definite route that I could go down. And it also, what I began to realise was that it encompassed all my different knowledge, because it was like working on a film set. You worked as a press photographer, you had to see pictures quickly, there was a lot of responsibility. And then you went into the studio, there was the opportunity to set stuff up with the actors and work with studio lighting and so on. So I could see now how my skill set in photography, which was quite diverse and varied, and I'd like to think relatively deep, was actually
handy.
Well, was really appropriate for this type of work. So that's my early part.
Your friend, this friend of yours was Rebecca, isn't it?
Yes.
And how do you feel that that day turning up to a big set already as your first experience? Because Robin Hood, I'm guessing, it wasn't a small set at the studios, isn't it?
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was a big production, and it was shot on the back lot at Shepperton. So it was a castle set with probably 300 or 400 extras. And although I thought I'd got to work early, I think they must have been there from the night before. Hair, makeup, costume.
With the extras.
All the sets and the extras. That's obviously something that's part and parcel with the film industry. Long days, long hours, absolutely. And a lot of people, for example, the hair and makeup and costume do even longer hours, longer days, day after day. But of course, it's impressive. I mean, the thing is, it's a bit, I suppose, likable to likened to, the first experiences of photography, seeing pictures appear in the developing tank. It's a similar sort of situation, really, when you sit on a big film set for the first time. It rather stays with you because you're rather immersed in it. The mud, the smell of burning fires, there's people in costume, etc. Which for me has been a wonderful education all the way through my career, which I'm grateful for, because I have worked on some extraordinary places, been to some extraordinary places and worked on some brilliant films, and it's been a real education, absolutely. And I think also if you make the effort to speak to, example, the people that are the experts on the film, you can get a wonderful knowledge about history and places and geography and so on. So it is an education as well.
When you turn up to set, was unit still the unknown for you back then, in 1991?
The mechanics of it, yes. I mean, I wasn't something that I had known about. It wasn't something that was particularly well advertised. Yeah. I think that, it's difficult because I've researched it quite a lot since then and obviously become quite knowledgeable. I mean, photography, film photography, marketing, publicity for films has gone through a metamorphosis over the years. I mean, back to the golden Hollywood years, Sinclair, C.J. Ball, for example, it worked on the basis that the talent was given to the photographers for set periods of time. And the whole publicity machine, as far as producing images was concerned, was a different scenario than it is now. A lot changed with the advent of the 35mm camera, the way you could go on set and the opportunity was there then to take photographs while they were filming. That doesn't mean to say they still didn't do things separately as they do now, like for marketing shoots, but it evolved to a situation whereby, because of the portableness of the cameras, photography could be done on set. So that really, really rather changed.
But what do you have to do when you step on set on Robin Hood? Do you have to assist James?
Yes, I had to. My brief then was to help him predominantly in the studio to begin with. Yeah. We're setting up the cameras, setting up the lighting for him to do marketing shoots with the principal cast, or marketing images with the principal cast. So that was my first brief. And also just basically to run around after him, bag carrying. Yes, cup of tea making, that kind of thing.
And was James shooting between takes with a blimp or some?
Yes,
something?
he was. Yes, back in those days. I mean, I know now because things have evolved. We were very limited as far as the sound situation was concerned. So we were using sound blimps, which is a camera, which is basically a soundproof foamed box that sits around the camera. Ridiculous. I mean, stills photography by its very nature on a set is challenging. Yeah. I mean, you're having to deal, with obviously eye lines, actors, the crew. You've got obviously challenges with lighting, lenses, the normal mechanics of doing photography to a professional standard. And then what you can do is make it even harder by putting it inside a box that you can't get at the controls, and you can't change the roll of film and things like that.
And do you get a chance to use some units still on Robin Hood, or you were just assisting James?
To begin with, all I was doing was assisting him in the studio for the lighting to set things up.
Okay. And how did your first experience as a unit still came to be?
Well, I did do some stills photography on that eventually. They kept on calling me in. And then they gave me the opportunity to do second unit on some of those big films. They have a second and a third unit shooting additional action or insert shots or scenic shots. And sometimes if principal cast are working with those units, then they have another stills photographer actually cover the set as well. So that's how I got a few chances, even on Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, to do a bit of on-set photography.
But you didn't have a blimp.
I didn't have a blimp, no.
So?
Shoot and cough at the same time. Bit like, yes, farting. Yeah.
What camera were you using back then?
I've always been a Nikon person.
Yeah.
I took Nikon. It was considered, well, Canon when I first started basically made photocopiers, so they didn't really make cameras. I think they made video cameras, but obviously they got heavily into the stills market as well. Round about the time I started photography, but it was Nikon Nikon Leica. Yeah. Contax was popular as well. One of the photographers on the newspaper used to use Contax, but Leica was obviously very popular for press work. But Nikon, we there was a couple of us were quite dedicated to Nikons. They had the early Nikon Mats, the FM2. I've still got my FM2. Yeah. Bulletproof, basically. Completely manual. You could drop them out of a camera, out of a first floor window, and pick it up, and it'd still keep working. Which, I mean, it was true. I mean, they're just, great cameras, absolutely. So, and once you get committed to the bodies, it's the lenses really. So, I mean, you can change bodies quite easily, but it's the lenses, of course. You start investing in the glass, and as time goes on, you get a lot of money wrapped up in the lenses and in the glass. So, therefore, it's not so easy to, it's a big, I know photographers do switch to different, but it's a big undertaking. It's expensive,
How do you, the day-to-day on set when you were using film, how was it in regards of settings? Do you have autofocus in the 90s? Manual. Jesus. How was that experience, especially with a shutter noise, manually focusing when you can't everything, and after that changing rolls? How many rolls were you using in a day?
It's sad, isn't it?
It's very different from my experience.
No, it was sad.
Why was it sad?
Because it was horrible.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean, it's dread.
But was it well paid or not in the 90s?
Yes.
Compared to newspaper?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely.
So it was worth it?
What, the money was worth it because of the pain?
Well, at least it's how you can go back to a newspaper and cry in silence. Or
yeah.
And that's, how do you operate? Everything manual. I'm guessing people move when they're doing takes now, unless it's a they're talking to each other?
Painfully, mainly. I'm sorry, it was pain. I mean, and I'm sorry, I'm just contemplating while I'm listening to you, and I'm so miles away, because I'm thinking about the fact that, yes, goodness me, right, started off black and white photography. Yes, we took on colour in the newspapers. Yes, everything was manual focus. And then, yeah, I mean, I remember the first autofocus cameras coming along. Yeah. I mean, I know you look shocked, but it's true. I did. Yes. Okay. That long ago. Yeah. So, I mean, and yeah, that was amazing because, for example, manual focus, right? One of the best shots, like, say in an action film is, for example, and I remember, in fact, another photographer, I mean, it's a great picture by Frank Connor, Last of the Mohicans, where Daniel Day-Lewis were running towards the camera. I mean, that was a challenge, pin sharp, right? Okay, so you had your systems, and my systems were quite straightforward. I guess it was like a lot of other people. What you would do, other photographers, is that you had the opportunity of a couple of rehearsals. You would work out, for example, where in the I'm not touching your cable, it's fine. I promise. It's very close there, though. I'm just going to move my arm out, all right? You would work out in the frame where he was like top to bottom, or maybe you wanted it half length, it was better shot, or her, or the action person running towards you with a spear. So you would like this. And then you would really, the best thing, if they were running quickly, was to pick 2 points of focus, right? Try and stop down to about f4, so you've got a decent bit of depth of field, right? And then they would run in to focus and run out of focus, and you would shoot and make sure you covered that one part. Yes. And if you got good at it, it was pretty reliable. It was, absolutely. But it was challenging. I mean, definitely. So, because there was no way you could follow focus. And then it was in a blimp as well. So then focusing in a blimp was difficult because essentially you had the tubes that would grip hold of the lenses, and they were a bit slippy. They weren't great. So it was okay in a scene where you had two people sitting like this and you could pick your focus and things, etc. And remember back in those days, we were just relying on like the hazy dot thing in the middle of a viewfinder. Yes. So it wasn't very easy either. So, and also blimps, remember, never fitted. You never really saw the eyepiece properly. You normally saw half the eyepiece. Okay. So, right. So here you have a challenging job to get decent photographs of £1 million celebrities, right? In, actors and everything. Yes. So you're challenged by the sound of the camera, no autofocus, a whole plethora of challenges.
Do you have a
pain?
Brief? Do you have a brief, or you just went on your own devices?
What? To begin with?
Yeah. The publicity or someone tell you, I need this?
Yes. Sorry, I think that's a good train of thought, though, just talking about those. But I mean, the brief as such really is a different kind of scenario. So.
Yeah, okay, but when you were on set.
Yes. So have we finished talking about the challenges of, the technical challenges of being on set? Yeah.
Apart from the technical challenge, but was there anything in particular that marketing wanted you to capture that you have, how do I do this now then?
Yeah, well, separately, yes, there is a published list of requirements that most studios ask for.
Okay.
And they are relatively simple, relatively straightforward. So singles, 2 shots, actors together, actors acting, actors, relaxed, so on, off scene, BTS, etc. Views, generally, details from the set, etc. So there is a published list of requirements. But obviously, as a photographer who's been working in the industry, you kind of know this off by heart, and that is only really a foundation from which you build, because then you're always looking for extra things or better things or more things that you can add to that range of photography that you're providing. I think the best way to consider it is that as far as marketing and publicity is concerned, it's like it's like making a cake and you're providing the ingredients, but you don't have a recipe yet.
Yeah. And how many rolls were you going through a day?
Well, there's no prizes for quantity. Quality is the important thing. Okay. And I think that's a very important point these days with digital. I mean, I teach on a reasonably regular basis, and one of the downfalls of digital with a lot of the students that I teach, they tend to overshoot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the advantages of coming from a background that was film-based is that you had 36 frames in a roll of film, and they needed to be 36 considered roll frames, basically. Yeah. And so therefore you really valued each one, to be perfectly honest. And that resonates throughout the whole of your image making career, as far as I'm concerned. So that's always stayed with me. So I'm not a heavy shooter.
Yeah.
I'm a careful shooter. That's my philosophy, basically. But in actual numbers, it was always relatively equatable. I used to shoot between 6 and 10 rolls of film a day.
How do you choose what film to use?
Well, you're dictated to by the circumstances you're in, for the lighting, for example. So
yeah, but what about I don't know. I just today there are like many film kind of that you can choose from.
Yeah.
Back then, the colors were consistent in all the films.
Or
there was a brand that you like more the colors for a particular reason. Because on your book you have like loads of different film rolls that you use on the different pictures.
Yeah.
So was there a preference?
No, I used loads of different films. I mean, I had them all in stock. Everything from like 64 ASA transparency film to 400 ASA, daylight tungsten, and I'd use color negative. And in the early days, we used to use black and white as well, because the newspapers published in black and white. So we often shot color and black and white. And again, even now, I'm not afraid to turn in black and white photographs. Yeah.
What do you do with rolls of film after you were on set? Do you give that back to publicity? Or
what the process is?
No, not what the process is, but is once that you done with the roll and at the end of a shoot, at the end of a film, what were you doing with all those images? You were handing everything back to marketing, or were you able? How do you choose the images that you wanted to keep for your own portfolio and stuff?
Well, when it was on film, you're talking about specifically.
Yeah.
Then when we were shooting on film, the way that it works is that you sign over the copyright to the studio or the producers of the film, basically the ones that are financing it. So they would retain the negatives. And generally speaking, I worked through a lab called Pinewood STILLS, which was based at Pinewood Studios. Okay. And they would hold all the negatives there because they were a central point for the studios to come to, for example, if they wanted prints. And as time went on, of course, we took on digital. So a lot of the time they began to use scan. So that was a great change that came to the industry, was when we started using digital photography. Yeah. So, but to answer your specific question, the studios retained the negatives and they were held there. Sometimes they were sent to the studio, which often would be based in LA or New York, but particularly LA. But more often than not, as the Pinewood STILLS had a relationship with the studios in America, the negatives would be held there.
And how do you ask for some sort of proof that you work on that project?
Sorry, say that again.
How do you ask for some sort of like, can I have a copy of this image, or I don't know, the images that got released? How do you get hold of them for your own portfolio? When
it was on color, when it was on film and it was prints, it was a nightmare because basically it was difficult to get the prints after the event, like it is for anybody, sometimes to get the photography. So what you did used to do was preempt it sometimes by getting prints done while you were during production, which could be at least a year before the film's released. And you would save up those on the basis that chances are a number of those would be used and you could use them. But remember back then as well, of course, it was a hard copy portfolio. So I have all my hard copy portfolios, right? So that was another thing. There was a massive expense there because you were printing pictures, then you were getting them mounted and put in a portfolio, which would be sent around the world to all the different people that were interested in perhaps employing you on another job. So my portfolio spent backwards and forwards from across the Atlantic normally, backwards and forwards. And to me, there was a massive expense of printing, mounting, and making these portfolios look presentable. I mean, it was crazy. So when digital came along and you got websites, hallelujah. And also what it meant was that it was much easier, for example, to get a copy of most of the photography and then see what was used and then obviously use the approved images on your website.
Yeah, of course. But you had 15 years on set before
Yes,
digital
totally.
came. Before digital came. So
Yeah.
you had like 10 years of just shooting film.
Yes. Oh, at least more, yeah. Yeah, 10 to 15, yeah.
And going back to your experience on set, where did you go from Robin Hood? What was so on your IMDb it says that your next job, 1992, was Heartbeat,
Yes.
which is a TV series. But how was the process of finding work? I mean, what were you doing in between?
Yeah.
After Robin Hood and Heartbeat, you were a freelance, of course.
Yes.
I'm guessing you were doing portraits.
Yeah.
Back in the newspaper or not the newspaper, just freelance?
Just to go back, yes, to your previous point about the portfolios. Yes, absolutely. It was 10 or 15 years of spending exponential amounts of money on printing and getting photographs mounted for portfolios, which never saw the light of day. Because sometimes, they weren't approved pictures, or you just worked on a number of projects and you just never got to use the images themselves. So yes, I spent a small fortune on printing and mounting and getting pictures put into portfolios that never actually ever got shown. Which was heartbreaking really, because we're all on a budget with photography. So yeah, it was tough going. It was, from that point of view. There was quite a lot of wastage really, to be honest. From my perspective, you tried to keep it down to a minimum. So going on to your next point about where it progressed from there.
Yeah.
Well, I went in high. Yes, absolutely. I went in at the top end, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It was a massive movie, multi-million-pound movie. And there was, I'd come off newspapers. So there was a gap to be bridged there as far as moving the career on. But that particular moment in time, sorry, I'm just going to have a drink of water. Yeah. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, me too.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. Yes, so yes, there was a bridge to be gapped between a gap to be bridged. Yes, I got in very high end, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It was at a time there was a person called Mrs. Thatcher who was the Prime Minister of this country, and whilst lots of people have many opinions about Mrs. Thatcher, I don't have one particularly, apart from the picture I took of Meryl Streep playing Mrs. Thatcher in The Iron Lady, which was a useful picture because it carried the title, The Picture That Pinged Around the World, because people were so keen to see her image. That is Meryl Streep's interpretation of Mrs. Thatcher. What she did do, Mrs. Thatcher, the real one, when she was in power, was erode the unions, break the back of the unions. I mean, it was a big thing with the miners, but it was also going on in other industries. The film and TV industry in this country was basically a closed shop. You needed to have a union card. It was a very enclosed environment. For the better or the worse, again, I have no opinion. I don't stand on either side of the fence, but people may say that unions obviously are beneficial from the point of view of protecting workers, and I certainly wouldn't disagree. But what it did mean was it was incredibly hard to penetrate the industry. But I was just there at a particular moment in time when the unions were being fragmented. So what it did do was create opportunity. So therefore, there was a gap in the market. There was a chance for young people, young blood to come into the industry. So, and also telly was changing a bit. I mean, back when I was younger, there was BBC One, there was BBC One, there was BBC Two and ITV. I mean, there were a couple of channels. I mean, that was it. But things were expanding in the TV industry even then, and they were investing in Sunday night dramas and that kind of thing. So there was a bigger opportunity with TV as far as requiring photography and marketing and publicity was concerned. So when I started in the industry, and very much based out of Pinewood, there was about 8 or 10 main photographers, and they were all quite a lot older than me. I was the new kid on the block back then. There were 1 or 2 of us that were just beginning to break into the industry, and there was the opportunity was there because the unions were breaking down. So, and there were filmmakers who were making films that were now beginning to make television and make television like it looked like movies.
Yeah.
And they wanted the photography and the marketing and the publicity to look more filmic. So I was just in the kind of right place at the right time. And I got offered, Heartbeat. I mean, back then on a Sunday night, it was getting 17 to 18 million viewers for the 1 hour of television on a Sunday evening. So, and they were spending then £1 million an episode roughly. I'm not touching your microphone, Lee, so stop glancing at it. It's very close though, all right? But I'm not touching it, I promise. You could move this handle a bit more, but I think I can manage it. I know where it is now.
You can move your chair.
No, I'm fine. I'm right here. Okay. So let me finish, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. So, so there was opportunity in the industry, and they were spending, as I say, they were trying to make television like film, and with using film cameramen, film lighting, and spending big budgets on stunts and various, and Heartbeat was one of them. I mean, it was a great cast. It was good Sunday evening TV, and it made a difference to me in a big way because what it was a guaranteed work for a period of time. So the producer on that film, a charming man called Steve Lanning, he offered me 6 days a month, right, at good money for 6 months. Okay, It doesn't sound like a lot, but there was mileage and it was a well-paid daily rate. And what it meant was you had cash flow. So I went out and bought, because I started at basics, I bought a computer and I bought a couple more lenses. And there were these strange things coming along, which seemed to be really quite useful. And I could see the potential in them called mobile phones, right? Because that was quite an invention. Because when I started, you had a phone card and you had to queue up at a phone box with a phone card or with coins to ring into an answer machine. And I remember when I got the first mobile phone, which wasn't quite the estate agent one with the big thing, but it was a big brick.
Yeah.
So I did touch your microphone.
I didn't hear it.
Okay, that's lucky. And I went off out for a walk limping along with my phone in my pocket because it was so heavy.
Yeah.
And the phone rang and there was a job. It was a miracle, amazing. So the technology which supported, it wasn't just a question of the changes that were going on in photography as far as digital coming along and things changing, but also the mechanisms that support small businesses like computers, mobile phones, all these kinds of technological advances were also coming along, which really helped absolutely as far as supporting, self-employed people and people, doing things like typing CVs, typing invoices, and being able to communicate, which is also part of the whole spectrum of being in business as well. Because being a photographer certainly and having the talent and the ability and the knowledge is important, but 50% of it as well is being a business person and being able to finance yourself, to contact people, to have the confidence to actually speak to people, to be able to develop relationships and see opportunities is half of it as well.
When it comes to day rate back in the 90s, how do you know that was the right rate that they were going for, or you just take whatever you got offer and you say, oh, this is better than any other day job, so I just say yes and go on? Well,
for a start, often the entry point, yes, was that they would ring you up and offer you. They would tell you what the day rate, what they would offer. They would make an offer, so they would phone you up and say, here's X amount, right? And you think, well, it's not bad for a week, and they'd say it's for a day, and you go, great, thank you. All right.
It's for a day.
Yeah. So that kind of like generally set the tone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So it wasn't really hard to work out from there.
And how did this person go in touch with you?
Pardon?
How did this person go in touch with you on Heartbeat after was that reference from Robin Hood, or
Yeah.
was that another job that you did for them, or?
They probably rang me on the mobile phone that was so heavy I could hardly walk up the road with. But yes, it was stuck in my pocket. But yes, it was totally. So directly, I know the answer to that was it was a connection. It was from the Robin Hood. It was the publicist that was working on the film, and they were friends with the producer. And the producer rang them up and said, "We want to find a photographer that can do proper stills photography, can shoot, atmospheric photographs, because we want it to look like film stills." And we're not in a position to employ one of the big guys full time on the whole production, but we could do with somebody of a standard that could do days, blocks of time. And my name was put forward, and there weren't very many of us, that were coming in, because it was all quite new. It was breaking up. As I say, the industry was beginning to get looser. So my name was run up the flagpole, and I got the job. And it went on for a couple of years. And off the back of that, Yorkshire Television, who were making Heartbeat, started to use me for loads of their different dramas. And I remember I was really going between London and Yorkshire, Leeds in Yorkshire, hotel rooms in both. And I remember going into the Yorkshire TV reception after about 6 months or a year, and they had about 6 or 8 photographs up on the walls. And I don't say all of them were mine, but most of them were mine, because they'd gone very much down the route of the atmospheric photograph opposed to the very much staged studio shot. They were moving away from that, and they'd really embraced the concept of kind of dramatic, more representative photographs from the productions. And as I was the only one mainly working for them doing that, most of the pictures in their reception were mine, so that was it was very rewarding.
When do you say, right, I'm going to pursue unit stills and drop everything else?
When do you say that?
Yeah. When for you and your experience back in the 90s, when do you see the potential of just doing unit stills?
I saw the potential off the back of Robin Hood when I drove in the car park and saw all the cars parked up there and young people driving them, and they were all a lot better than most of the cars most of my mates were driving at the time. Okay. I could see that there was a decent income there. I was perplexed by the fact that I realised I'd gone in up here, and really and truly, you need to climb the ladder a little bit, absolutely. So there was a slight dichotomy there between obviously the job I was working on, and I did get a few more assisting jobs on jobs like that. Yeah. But obviously I didn't have the wealth of portfolio and experience, so I needed a bit more grassroots. But therein lies the story of life and the way that just situations present themselves and how things just develop, because the industry was changing. So there was the opportunity that there was more lower end but good quality potential potential jobs out there. So that's how I began to fit in, really, was down at the sort of quality TV. And also there were 1 or 2 film companies starting up that were doing more independent type movies, like Working Title. It was early days with them, who've produced all the Bridget Jones Diaries film, hundreds of films, yes. But that was early. They were just getting going, really. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And I started working for them. I did a film called Loch Ness. Yeah. And off the back of that, it's opportunity. I worked with Ted Danson a couple of times, and he asked me to photograph his wedding in America off the back of that. So I went out to Martha's Vineyard and did his wedding photography. Bizarre, but there we are. It's just the way these opportunities come along. At the end of the day, my philosophy is always the same, is make things happen. I mean, at the end, if you are there and you're proactive and you're putting yourself out there, then opportunities will come along. They will present themselves.
From your film days, before we go into digital, was there a project that stood out for you more than the others that you've done? That it was, I don't know, more rewarding, or you got like really good quality images?
From the film days?
Yeah, from the film days.
There was a point when I felt my career had plateaued, where I got the posters on 3 films shot on film. I think that was Tomb Raider, with the second one with Angelina Jolie. Yeah. Troy. Yeah. And Phantom of the Opera.
All of them film.
All shot on film, and all made the posters, And each one of those films had a marketing or special shoot as well. So separate from me. So that happens often on films. It used to happen more than it does now, but they would bring in a named photographer, a celebrity photographer, and do a separate marketing shoot. And that often would be the poster, whereas your images were used for publicity as such, because there is a dividing line, very fine, but marketing and publicity. Marketing essentially is paid for advertising, billboards, sides of buses, magazines. Publicity free, which is what you see in listing magazines, goes on Instagram now and so on and so on. So that there was a point there where I felt that my career, I couldn't do any more, that I'd got 3 posters on 3 major Hollywood films and they'd all come from the stills that I'd shot on set and on film.
But on your book, there is a few of Angelina Jolie that were on a studio. Some of the images. On a studio, like, on a setup, on a
yes, yeah, sure. I mean, I probably did things separately as well. Yes, there are. Yeah, that's right. I might have even done the marketing shoot on the second one. I can't remember. Yes.
The poster of Tom Raider and Angelina stood up and stuff like that.
Yes.
You shot that on a studio.
No, that isn't. That's shot that was done as interesting, actually. That's a good story on film, that one. That the one of her in the silver.
Yeah. The silver film.
They shot, which often happens sometimes during films. They wanted to shoot an advert for the film.
Oh.
Right. So it was on Santorini in Greece. It was live, and it was at the top of a hill, and it was the only thing that we did for one day. It was right a really steep climb up to the top of in a village to go to the top to get that view, etc., etc. So I did have an assistant working for me on that film quite often, because we had to have. Don't crack your knuckles during the takes, please. It'll come out on the sound.
Right, go on.
Bad practice.
Bad practice. Yeah, okay. No,
do you need me to say that again because you've got cracked knuckles?
Got it.
Awkward.
Got it.
Okay.
The silence is more awkward.
Do you think so? Should we let it go on a bit longer? Should I speak now? Okay.
Please.
Went to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Took a film camera with me. Carried it up myself. But what I was going to say was that in the early days with film particularly, one did need an assistant quite a lot because there was just a lot more involved. I mean, there was more camera equipment. So I did used to shoot 35mm, but I took X-Pan, I took medium format, and then there was all the rolls of film. There was a lot more paraphernalia that we were dragging around with us to shoot sets, to shoot costumes, sometimes some portable lighting equipment and so on. And then there was just the logistics of all those rolls of film and logging them all and then getting them all, all those contact sheets. There was stills approval with the actors. I mean, just, okay, to give you some concept of the volume of photography. So on the Tomb Raider 2, which we're shooting on film, not the cost of the film stock, the processing bill alone for processing, numbering, view packing, so basically dealing with all the photography, was £108,000. Yeah.
That is a lot of money.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. So that's the importance that they put on marketing and publicity in the photography.
You did both of the Tomb Raiders?
I did, yes. I did do both of them.
Was that a highlight back in 2001?
But let me just finish what I was going to say to you. So please just kind of hold on to the thread, because I am.
Yeah.
All right?
Well done.
Thank you. So the Tomb Raider 2, shot on film. I took my Mamiya RZ67.
Yeah.
Went to the top of the hill, and literally I shot 6 frames. It was a roll of, I can't remember whether 10 or 12. I think there was 12 on a roll. That's right, in 120 format and 16 in 220 format. They're a bit thinner. So there were 12 frames. I didn't even shoot the whole roll. I shot 8 frames, right? Because they just went up there. They shot it as a movie shot, but they just did 1-2 takes. Yeah. And I just got her to hold it at the end, shot like 6 or 7 frames. That was it. Came back down, clip tested it, and that made the poster.
Okay.
Yeah, from like, so when I think you think about the volume of digital photography and thousands of photographs, I think that absolutely defines how, really, if you get it right, 4 frames is enough, you know, totally.
How did you? Everything was manual in film. Well, in the 90s, back in the 2000s, I guess you got a light meter on cameras. You started to have light meters on cameras.
Yes.
How did you expose? How were you exposing on sets?
Well, I used to use 2 meters as well. So you did have the meter inside the camera, which was relatively simple, to be honest. I mean, like, for example, the Nikon FM2s and that, it was just a needle, went up and down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, not really what you would consider to be the most reliable all the time. A vaguely correct exposure. I suppose it's a movement on from looking at the packet, which says Sunlight F16, because with old rolls of film, you used to have it published inside. You could set your camera to different measurements based on the little diagram inside.
Yeah.
But so I had a spot meter and an ambient meter, and used to on the go all day long. Spot metering, ambient, spot meter, ambient, and maybe through the lens was just a reassurance.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think really the point being, categorically, I would absolutely stand by saying that I think the craft of photography on film was substantially higher than the craft of, I mean, digitizing now. I absolutely love it. It's revolutionized the industry. I've completely embraced it. Given the choice, I'm always going to prefer it. Of course I am, especially as I've come from film and I have the benefit of the being able to frame my pictures and the much more careful approach, I think, to actually framing and shooting and exposure and so on. But ultimately, the reassurance of the endless roll of film in digital. I mean, 64 gigabyte, 120, whatever you need. You're never going to run out of film. The ability to be able to change from your white balance and so on, because that was another issue. I mean, obviously, like if we were shooting outside on film, not just white balance, but even just the exposure up and down, up and down. I mean, some films just don't work, especially when you're on transparency films. They're just not so good in different types of light, they get too contrasty. Whereas with digital, you can just dial it in or dial it up or down, etc.
Yeah, but you had tungsten film, isn't it?
What?
You had tungsten rolls of film.
Yes, you did.
And daylight.
Yes, you did. But you just had, I mean, some days, if it was like, for example, like we shot a lot on E6 transparency film. I mean, the best thing was a bright overcast day because it was nice, even lighting. Yeah, totally. Right. But I mean.
Was there a highlight role job that you had when you were doing film, like Lara Croft? Because you did Lara Croft same year you did Bridget Jones' Diary.
Right.
Were those 2 jobs the highlights of that kind of period of time where you were doing like film times? Let's say I'm blocking it like the block of time of you just doing film.
Right.
That was my question. Where is Lara Croft and Bridget Jones' Diary were the 2 most important jobs that you had?
Do you stop and take a break in this at all?
You need a break?
Yes. Just for a minute?
Yeah.
Just to stretch my legs?
Yeah.
You can do.
Yeah. Can do.
You can cut it, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the rest of your experience in the 90s up until 2001, so you did like 10 years. It's been pretty consistent, the kind of work that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my question in regards of Tomb Raider Bridget Jones is because the one that I can recognize as being in Argentina this time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why was my question, if those 2 jobs were the most or the biggest one that you've done on film. I mean, I know that you've done Troy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was Troy on film?
Mm-hmm. Was it on film? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, mainly. Let me have a look at the CV. So you're saying at that point, it's like there's a plateau. They're the biggest films you've done on film. Yes.
So the answer is yes then.
The answer is yes.
So Lara Croft and Bridget Jones. Because on your book you only mention references from Lara Croft, Bridget Jones, Atonement. There is a picture of Miss Porter as well, Pride and Prejudice. But there is nothing from the other experience that you had. Why were those only? Those titles on your book?
It might have been purely a logistical thing. It might just simply have been that I had better access. I had the photographs. And perhaps they just demonstrated or illustrated the points I was making easier. There was no particular discriminatory reason.
What was the reason for the book?
The reason was because I've always wanted to invest and support the next generation of photographers and people coming up behind me. I've always engaged with students, assistants. I've always answered every email that I've had. It's very unusual. Somebody out there might have sent one that got into my junk. I didn't even know. But I've always tried to support the industry. I mean, I think there's a big mystery that surrounds the film industry.
Yeah.
Even more so when I was starting out. I think it's become less mysterious these days because of BTS, Instagram, social media, things like that. People have got a much bigger insight into the industry. And I think people can see the possibilities because sometimes they don't even go into the film and TV industry. They can become hugely accessible through YouTube or through other avenues, other paths, etc. But certainly when I was getting into the business, I just felt that it was such a kind of closed industry, so difficult to actually get information, to have any kind of insight or understanding. So what I wanted to do was just kind of introduce to just kind of bit of penetration into the business, just so that give people the opportunity to look inside it a little bit more, so that it became a potential, a possibility that people could pursue a career in stills photography in the film industry or TV industry.
Do you have to ask for permission to use those images?
Yes, I did. I licensed all the images that were used in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. They've all got credits and license for them.
How was the change to digital? The first change that you got in 30 years of doing this? Well, the second, really. From black and white, you went into color. From color, and film, you went into digital. How was the change? How do you feel changing to digital?
Look at me closely. Shall I tell you now? Oh, look. Shall I tell you now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Look at me when I tell you. Painful.
Why was it
painful? Did you get that? Is it coming through clearly?
Yes, it is.
At the end of film photography, we had excellent films, really good films that could hold the low light. Brilliant, absolutely, particularly low light. I was starting using neg films a lot, press neg films, 800, 1600, 3200 ASA, fantastic, really reliable. Then along came digital. Yes, a noisy, very expensive piece of equipment with a lot of people very keen on it, but didn't really understand the logistics. So they wanted, now we have the instantaneousness of being able to shoot high quality images, email them, text them straight away. They had the people that you were working for, often in America, thought that because it was digital, it should be instantaneous. So not only was it challenging on set from the technical point of view, particularly, as I say, in low light, and a lot of movies are shot with pools of light, low lighting, etc. But it was also challenging from the expectations of the people that wanted to use it. So there was this cleft stick for a good couple of years where you had really, it was fine in well-lit conditions, outside, etc. Digital was great. It was, and it was manageable. But the minute you went in the studio, it was really hard work. So I had a situation for a good couple of years where I was running digital cameras and film cameras next to each other. Yes. So let's just reference that again. Painful. Okay.
Yeah.
It was really hard work. It was. because yeah, as I say, for the exact reason I've given, people, your clients' expectations and the technical logistics of actually operating on a film set with digital. But things improved and they progressed, absolutely. And by the time we got to the Nikon D2X, then yes, suddenly things got a lot better. The noise was a lot better, right? You know, the camera was just much more reliable as far as low light was concerned. It was just much more usable. So I would say from that point onwards, it came into its own, to the point whereby now, I mean, oh, wow. I mean, they are just fantastic tools. They are incredible.
There is a lot of people that are a fan of the Nikon D2H, I think.
Yeah,
D2X.
yes, that's right. They really started to get good. The D1, D1X and all that was horrendous. It really was just, you know, expensive. And then that was another thing. I mean, again, another challenge, because they're all parts of the spectrum of being a photographer, was, you know, you were spending £5,000 or £6,000 on these camera bodies, right? And 6 months later, a year down the line, you're right. I mean, I was used to buying cameras and holding on to them for 2, 3, 4, 5 years because they were manual cameras, and really you used them until they were dead.
Yeah, they haven't changed anything.
Didn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Okay, autofocus came along, got a bit better, but you know, essentially, you didn't need to. You didn't, you know, the technology didn't change hugely. Now you bought a camera, cost £5,000. Seriously, it happened to me. A year, 18 months later, it's like you can't get it £500 for it. It's like, wow, that was a big hit. So there were some very big hits earlier on, as far as you know, for small business people like me, you know, photographers, with the cost of the equipment. And of course, they were just ramping up the gigabytes, and then it had the knock-on effect. You know, bigger camera, more cards, bigger cards, more computers, more hard drives.
Yeah.
It was like a race to spend money. You know, it was, and so it was challenging for quite a few years.
And do you remember what year you reckon you stopped using film?
I haven't stopped using film.
I know that recently. Well, this is more recent now, but I seen that you went back on set with a Canon 1B.
No, I don't use Canon. I'm a Nikon. Were you not listening earlier on?
There was a post of it on Instagram. I'm gonna put it on
Not
screen.
by me.
Okay. Going back to the question.
If the question's correct.
Okay. Do you remember what year you started just using digital now? Or what camera body was it?
Let me think now. It's better if I think by the actual models of the cameras. So D1, D2 was about the D2X, D2H time, D3, definitely by D3. So if you equated it back, looked up when a D3 was like, that was really when, so whenever that was, I don't know. What are we up to now? We're on to Zs. So they went to D4, D5, and then it was...
No, I know D3 already, that sort of era.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that.
What was that? Mid-noughties? Early noughties?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it was probably. I would think it was past the millennium. It was probably 0, 0, 2, 3, 4 or 5. About then, roughly. I would probably have still been taking an X-Pan. I had one then to do some wide anamorphic photography.
Is that from the digital era, is that a job that you like the most? That you said, or let's say in general, in your 30, you entering 35, 36 years of being a unit at STILLS?
Yes.
Is that a favorite job that you had? That not
rewarding, digitally
or in film?
Well, let's just segue between film and digital. All right. For the benefit of your listeners and your viewers.
Yep.
Yes. So when digital really kicked in, from my perspective, I completely embraced it. Absolutely. I mean, the possibilities of the endless roll of film that we've mentioned, because you've got the large memory card, to go from the white balances, etc.
Yeah.
And really, at the end of the day, the digital Polaroid, the reassurance on the back of the camera, particularly when you're in situations where there's a lot riding on it, filming £80,000, £100,000 a day, big scenes, big actors. Sorry, I did touch it then. I'll touch it again. I'll hold it there. You know, the reassurance of actually seeing that you've got the shots. I mean, it's a wonderful feeling. It is, of course it is. So I mean, I completely embraced digital, and it came along at a really good time for me because yes, I did black and white, C41, E6. Yes, the changes in camera, autofocus, etc. I was at the point, yes, where I thought I'd got 3 posters from film work.
Yeah.
So along came something else to get your teeth into it. So I love it. I mean, absolutely. I completely embraced it. When it came to the point where it was absolutely usable on a day-to-day basis in my professional context.
How did the sampling caught up like simultaneously with the digital era, or how were you? Do you have to adapt your camera to the old blimps that you had, or how did that work out?
To begin with,
yeah.
So what was the first part of your question then?
The D2H bodies,
yes,
they're the professionals one with the battery grips.
Yeah.
How do you use the sound blimps on those bodies?
Oh, they were basically still the same. You still needed to use them inside a blimp because it was still a digital SLR, so there was still the movement of the mirror.
Yeah, but it wasn't the same blimp as the film and as the film cameras, was it?
Well, I mean, therein lies another story. I mean, the blimps themselves. I mean, supposedly, it was interesting because there was only one firm that made blimps to begin with, and it was Jacobson's, and it was by a chap who ran it out of his garage in LA. And what I loved was the fact that they listed all the different cameras that the blimp would accommodate.
Yeah.
But all the cameras were substantially different in shapes,
yeah.
but they weren't cut to measure. So how it worked on the basis was when you looked through the eyepiece at the back was how much of the image you saw, half of it, 2/3, or just a third. It just never really fitted. So it didn't make much difference when the digital cameras came along because you just rammed it in and you still couldn't really see that much through the viewfinder. So yes, absolutely. It was a handicap entirely. So now let's bring it right up to date and let's talk about mirrorless cameras where you're in a situation where you couldn't imagine in a professional context working with such a disabling piece of equipment, which was what it was, right? Because it was, not only was it a challenging job and there was all the technical challenges involved with the films and various, or even then the digital cameras and changing lenses and focusing, et cetera, and changing rolls of film. Yes, but then you put it inside this box where you couldn't actually see properly. So it was like you were doing photography all the time with, one arm tied behind your back and someone had just poked you in the eye most of the time. So you were at a disadvantage. So now when I go on set with my bag of equipment, with a Z9, Z8, mirrorless cameras, the endless roll of film, all the advantages it brings, it's just a wonderful experience. I take now the photographs in the last couple of years, after all these years of photography, that I've wanted to take for years and years and years. The adaptability of being able to have the screen in different angles and being able to hold it and get into different positions, and the varying formats on the back of the camera, all the advantages that digital brings. It's so thrilling and so exciting and obviously with the benefit of the knowledge that I've got that has been built up over all these years, it has freed up my photography, and particularly the Z9, the Z8, the last few years, the mirrorless, and the quality, it has just been extraordinary, and it's so thrilling and exciting.
But the change wasn't painful this time.
The change was ecstasy. We have gone from pain to pleasure.
Yeah, 100%. Because you already caught up with it during your DSLR era sort of thing. So just another change.
It is the other end of the extreme.
Yeah, that is easy. I have just a couple of last questions for you. What's the biggest lesson that you learned on set?
I think the most important thing and what will serve you the best is to be able to represent a movie in a single image, and you can capture the emotion of a film. That's the lesson I've learned, and that's what's really stood me and my career, has underpinned it really, is the ability to actually get those quintessential images from a production that really convey the emotion, convey the drama, encapsulate it. I think that is the quintessential requirement of a stills photographer, of a photographer that's after the primary images that will really market and publicize a particular production.
Do you think that unit stills is still very competitive, like in terms of amongst photographers, or do you think that it's still a really close niche?
Oh no, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity generally, and I think it's certainly it's opened up immensely. I mean, to be honest, photography, as I'm sure you're aware, as a professional pursuit, is competitive anyway. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, obviously wanting to earn their living from photography. But I do also equally think there's never been so much opportunity as there is now, to be perfectly honest, because of the YouTube's, Instagram, TikTok, that kind of thing. I mean, there was one of the questions that you were originally going to ask me, I think, which was about what opportunity or what like, would I do things differently if I was if I started all over again?
Yeah.
I mean, mine has been a very in-depth progression in one particular area of specialization, photography. I mean, I think the answer to that question was, the natural progression for me would have been to DOP or cinematography, because of the appreciation of light and the interest in optics and the technical side of it. That would have been the obvious thing to do. But I mean, the thing is that the opportunity just wasn't there to really, the equipment. I mean, that's what it's brought now, is the fact that you can be a filmmaker. You can do so many more things because the equipment is so much more advanced, and also you've got the platforms to get your exposure on. So, I mean, that's what I find, is that a lot of the younger generation, they're coming up behind. I mean, they can shoot videos, they can edit them, they can grade them, they can do so much more that was open than was open to us when we were sort of establishing ourselves.
After all this time, could you choose unit stills as a career, or if you look back and after all, let's say the pain that you went through with the cameras and stuff, would you still choose unit stills rather than, I don't know, portraits or weddings or whatever?
Listen, I don't think, to be honest with you, I have to sit here and say to you, it is still being, there's still a bit more. Yes, I'm still working. And so basically, it's been a very kind to me. Absolutely. As I say, if you go right back to the beginning, as far as my contemporaries, the people that I grew up with, we wanted to try and achieve creative careers. So I had friends that were designers, want to be photographers, musicians, etc. in the 70s and 80s. So, to actually fulfilled the dream, fulfilled the ambition of being able to earn a living from a creative debacle. And I've had a lot of freedom within it. I've been able to express myself. I think that, there is a lot of opportunity for being creative within the on a film set, obviously within stills photography. So I have no criticism. And I've earned a good living from photography, absolutely. So it's always, you could always say, I could have done things differently, could have done things in different ways and done things better. But I think comes a point you have to be grateful for your lot in life and say that, it's been very fulfilling and it continues to be, absolutely. So personally, no, I'm satisfied with what I've done and what I've achieved, and there's still a bit more left. And I think that's also been underpinned by the investment in supporting others, and we're doing some teaching and that kind of thing. I do get a lot from that.
Where would you like to be in 5 years? Is there a job that you haven't done, a drama that you would love to do? I know you've done so much over these past 35 years. Is there anything left that you say, oh, I would have loved to work on a show like this?
Ask me that question again, just the first part.
Where would you like to be in 5 years?
For a man of 64, in 5 years' time, I'd be happy to just be alive and standing up. Seriously?
Oh, well, okay, let's take out the
If
5
I'm
years.
honest, if I was still in the same position as I am now, I do some very interesting assignments. And the spectrum. I worked on Sense and Sensibility last year. We shot on film. They embraced creativity. They wanted abstract kind of imagery, which was great. suited me. They also wanted the reliable photography that they need for marketing and publicity. So that was, and I was working with people that I really like, I really enjoy. So that was a great project to be working on. This last weekend, as you know, because you've driven down here today, I live in the West Country, down in Cornwall, and I was working on a small movie over the weekend for a couple of days. Very creative for a creative who comes from LA. Interesting project, totally. So that was a good combination. But I also get time for the family, and I get time to enjoy the environment and some hobbies and bits and pieces. So personally, at this stage in the game, yes, decent balance between work and life, which I think we're all trying to achieve. So quite frankly, yes, if I could be here in 5 years doing the same thing, I'd be more than happy.
Alex, thank you so much, mate.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I really hope that you enjoy it, and if you did, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know down below who would you like me to interview next. Until then, I'm gonna see you on the next episode.